WOC reader, and welcome back to my channel. Welcome to my November reading wrap up. So the second half of November was pretty hectic, especially with Thanksgiving. So I just wanted to read some lighter things, but I also wanted to read some books that I kept saying I was going to get to and kept pushing off each month. And I'm definitely not caught up on my TBR yet, but I'm starting to feel better about where I'm at. So Izzy and May were on Izzy's channel, Happy for Now, and they were reading all the Under the Mistletoe collection stories, which was the set of short stories for Amazon readers last month. I normally don't really read these stories. I mean, sometimes I check them out because they're free, but a lot of times it's just hard for me to invest in them because they are so short that I don't always feel like I take anything away from them. And some of these authors I had never really read before in this collection, so I decided to test a few out. I read Cruel Winter with You by Ali Hazelwood, and it was an okay story. So it was best friend's brother, specifically best friend's little brother. I think the chemistry between them was fine, but I really couldn't get into the romance just because I don't mind best friend's brother, I really don't. But it's just the way that she wrote it, where she had the main character talking about how she held him when he was a baby and she was like 2. That felt a little weird to me. Guess that he was like always around when they were little. It just felt like a very family dynamic. Their families were close, so that just it kind of messed it up for me, since all that happened at the beginning and I could not vibe with this story. Like, it wasn't bad. It just that part ruined it for me, and I couldn't click. Then I read Merriment and Mayhem. That is by Alexandria Bellafleur, a new to me author. I didn't really care for this one, I'm not gonna lie. It was just kind of boring. It's firefighter came to her house when she burnt her holiday cooking. They got very hot and steamy. There just wasn't enough for me to invest in that romance, especially in this short format. Then I read Only Santas in the Building by Alexis Daria, and I love Alexis Daria's stories, I really do. And this was another good one in my opinion, despite the short length. In this one, we are following 2 neighbors. They kind of been feeling each other but haven't acted upon it, and then their apartment building does this holiday party where everybody dresses up in their like twist on Santa, and they gotta hit it off and end up hooking up that night. The only thing that ruined it for me was the ending. I just felt like they were too new to this relationship to be spending the holidays with each other's families. That part didn't feel right to me. But other than that, it was another enjoyable Alexis Daria read. Then I read Sleeping with the Frenemy by Natalie Kanya. And I really enjoyed this one. So it is a part of the Vega family love stories. The setting is Chicago. I love this big Puerto Rican family being involved and being up in each other's business. You have involvement from the grandparents and the parents, and then the main characters' siblings and friends. I love those types of stories, so that really delivered here. In this one, we follow Leo. He has been in love with Sophie for years, but she's only ever liked this kind of friends with benefit dynamic between the 2 of them. She went away to Paris for a couple of years to live her dreams, has come back and is working for her father's company. and he wants a little bit more from her than she's willing to give. Things kind of heat up when she ends up moving into his apartment because she doesn't have her apartment anymore, and her grandmother has moved in with her mom, so there's just no space for her. He has all this extra room, so everybody's like, oh, you can go stay with him. And then they end up like finding a stray dog and taking in this stray dog. And I just really loved the chemistry between these two. It really worked for me. I liked seeing an Afro-Latina main character as well. I thought the author did a pretty good job handling that. And just the way, even though she's Puerto Rican, there would be some treatment towards her that was a little bit different compared to like people who are white or lighter skinned Puerto Ricans. So I like that that was acknowledged as well. And she had this complicated relationship with her father, and that he was never really there for her. And then even now he's in her life as an adult, he still doesn't know how to be there for her. So she was kind of balancing that, balancing letting go of the reins and being able to embrace love. So overall, this was really good. The narrator for the audiobook did a great job, especially with the spicier scenes. She really put her all into those. And it does make me want to check out more in this series. I read book 1. This was book 3, so I just need to hurry up and go back and read book 2. I listened to New Nigeria County by Clara Brown. This one is just solely an audiobook. I had received it from Simon & Schuster a couple of months ago. I'm like, I don't know about Clara Brown, but I'm down to check out a black book. I don't know what this one is going to entail. And I'm happy that I decided after watching an interview at the Melanin Library to listen to the story, because it was actually pretty good. I'm not familiar with her skits, so I was just going in with a blank slate. In New Nigeria County, it's a parody of Our World. You have a very matriarchal versus patriarchal world where like the dads run the PTO and the women are the more forceful ones in the story, which was funny, made for some cute moments. They also live in a majority black US versus a majority white one. And they call the white people like European Americans, and they treat their norms as something like stereotypical. So it's just a fun twist on that, another way to look at race and poke fun at the different micro and macro aggressions. And I think this will be, it'll be funny, just like if you're not, like if you are black, because you'll immediately get all the jokes. But I think it's a fun way to just talk about race and lighten up the mood as well for those who are white. It kind of gives them a little bit of a different perspective. I finally read Half Resurrection Blues by Daniel Jose Alder, which I'm very proud of because this was on my fall TBR. And I was trying to read it for like 2 months in a row and just kept pushing it aside, so I finally read it. I will say that it is very slow paced, so that's part of why it took me so long to read, as I was just kind of coasting along. It was still enjoyable. It's just like the first half especially, not a whole lot was happening. But the writing was so good that I just continued to read it. And this one we're following Carlos de la Cruz. He is like a half-dead, like not necessarily a zombie, but he's what they call an in-betweener. He doesn't remember anything about his old life. And he is just going around like the city working for this special counsel who put him on assignment to help thwart this threat. He ends up meeting this woman whose brother he accidentally killed, and he's really falling for her, but he has that secret looming over his head. And this is the first in a series, so I'm really curious to see where it goes next, because a lot happened in the back half, and particularly like the events at the end. I don't know where they're gonna go from there. So like I said, this is a slower paced urban fantasy, gritty, but I had a good time with it. I read Master of Me by Kiki Palmer. If you are considering checking out this one, I think you should do the audiobook, especially because there are excerpts from her podcast in it, which, from what I'm hearing, it doesn't sound like those translated too well to the print format. You don't have to check out this book. Honestly, if you're going in expecting a memoir, you're going to be disappointed. It is not a memoir. It is closer to a self-help book, but not necessarily a self-help book, even though there's quizzes and things like that. You do get a lot of anecdotes about her personal life and how she learned from those experiences. If you've listened to her podcast, though, or any of the interviews surrounding her talking about this book, you've basically heard what you need to know about her life. Hannah Cooks with Care by Stacey Wells. I actually forgot that I had downloaded this a few months ago, and then I was like seeing these ads on TV about Native American Heritage Month, and I told my sister, I'm like, oh, I keep forgetting, like, it's Native American Heritage Month. And she said, that's what the white people want you to think. But no, I wanted to read something and, like, just quick and get through some of these children's books that I had sitting around. So I was pleasantly surprised that this had a Choctaw girl as the main character, and she loves to cook. That is her love language. She cooks for her family and friends. So it's just a short, quick beginner chapter book read. Nothing like too exciting. It didn't have like some big plot that they were kind of working towards outside of the cooking. So it's good for the kids for just like a quick read, but I don't know if it would become like a favorite just because they needed a little bit of that extra, like she needed just like a little extra side plot to come together. And I mean, they were painting for a school play, but then we didn't get to actually see the school play. This Cursed House by Del Sandine. So I was curious about reading this. This is not usually the type of book I go for. I mean, I do like historical, but I usually try to avoid anything about white passing. And in this one, we're following Gemma Baker. She just got out of a bad relationship. She's trying to have a fresh start miles away from her home. And she ends up taking a job with this family she thinks is going to be a tutoring job. They live right outside of New Orleans. She gets there, and it's this beautiful family, like, of very, 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 very light-skinned people. Like, they're those generationally light-skinned people who only marry like super light-skinned people so they can be as white as possible. And she ends up finding out they don't want her to be a tutor. In actuality, they want her to break this curse on them where not only are they not able to leave their property, but every 7 years one of them dies. So she kind of gets swept up in their world. Like, there's like incest and murder, and all of that was very interesting at first. Like, despite them being terrible, terrible people who were constantly demeaning her for the color of her skin, I was interested in all the twists and turns, and that's what really kept me reading. The problem for me was in the second half of the book, but in particular, there was this heavy-handed message about being able to forgive and move on to achieve true healing, and I'm like, these people were terrible though. Like, there's nothing to forgive or forget and move on here. Like, they were awful people So I hated that turn it took, and I didn't understand her desperation to still remain with them despite them being terrible. So like they started losing me because then there were just more things happening that gave her good reason to run in the other direction, and she still kept staying. So what started off as a really good book by the end just ended up fizzling out. I did not love the ending of this one at all. I read Make the Season Bright by Ashley Herring Blake. This was my first Ashley Herring Blake book. I wanted something cute for the holidays. It's actually very hard to find good Christmas stories. I find that the stuff I tolerate in Christmas movies while I'm sitting around drinking cocoa and just chilling around the house, I can enjoy more when it's in visual form than when it's in book form. And this one really ended up not giving me the holiday spirit. Even though it was set around Christmas, even though in the beginning they did some Christmas activities, it just never really felt like Christmas to me. Here we're following exes who just don't know how to be mature, and they are close to 30, so I don't understand why their maturity level was so low. On top of that, they were boring. They were boring, they were too much alike. They end up at the same place for the holidays through mutual friends, but they try to pretend at first they don't know each other, which is hard because they're being pushed into situations um where like the things they know about each other ends up coming up, and they have friends who are kind of pushing them together because they think they would make a cute couple. I don't understand why these people wanted to be a couple. Like there was some whole situation where they were about to be married and ended up not being married because one of them wasn't ready to commit, which like if you leave me at the altar, we're done. We're not going back on a second chance. And I didn't really understand the reason why their relationship broke down the first time. I don't feel like they really had anything too much in common other than liking to have sex with each other. Their connection was just not deep enough for me to buy this second chance relationship between them. And the book felt quite long, especially at the end. The ending really dragged out. The only reason why I kept reading, even though, to be honest, I wasn't hooked after the first couple of chapters, was because I was listening to the audiobook while I was doing things around my house. Last, I read Dear Dad, Growing Up with a Parent in Prison and How We Stay Connected by J.J. Patton, Antoine Patton, and Kiara Valdez. So, I just want to make it known I am mutuals with Kiara Valdez. I interviewed her before for my blog, and we have conversations sometimes about graphic novels. I actually forgot this book was coming out until around the week that it came out, and then I ended up requesting it from the library. And I'm glad I did. For one, I think this book does a great job at showing us a different type of experience. I'm always for books that show the relationship between black fathers and daughters. I feel like we don't see enough of that in media, which includes TV and books. And so to see a positive black father-daughter relationship on page was very nice. And I know a lot of people, when approaching this book, they said they hoped it would show more of the emotional struggle of having a parent in prison. I don't know what that's like. I never experienced that. I can't speak for those people. I imagine it is kind of your norm if that's something you were almost born into, like JJ was. Her father went to prison when she was very, very little, so it was the norm for her and her mom to call him on the phone and write him letters. And I like that she was able to show that they maintained a good relationship through their letters, even though they couldn't really see each other. And while he was in prison, he learned how to code and got his degree and was able to use those skills upon graduation. I think we hear about these types of programs, but we don't hear about the stories of where they're a success. And it's really inspiring that he was able to take a negative experience and twist it into a positive. I love that the book didn't harp on the struggle of being in prison and having to reacclimate to society. Instead, while they did, well, there was like some wiggle room while they had they had to uproot a lot of their old life and move to a new state and adapt. We got to see them figure out their relationship a little bit outside of prison. They bonded over coding and they were able to come together and create this app. I just want to look up the name of, sorry, I want to look at the name because I want to make sure I have it correct. The app was called Photo Patch. This is a real app where real people can connect to their family members in prison. I had never heard of it, but I think this is a great thing. Like, they realized they didn't have a smooth way to communicate when her father was in, and they created this app to make it smoother to be able to share letters and pictures with family members. And hopefully this book really does inspire people. I love that it kind of took away some of the stigma about having a parent who went to prison, because there's like a lot of embarrassment, and he does acknowledge like she doesn't want to tell people at first. She was lying to her friends saying that her dad was away in the military for years, and honestly, for kids there's nothing to be ashamed of there. You don't know why somebody was in prison, what happened, the circumstances behind that, and you don't know how they've managed to change and rehabilitate their life going forward. I also love that this was a relatively short read, because that is very important, especially like this is perfect for someone like my niece who is 11 and she's in sports and she doesn't have a lot of free time to read, and she also doesn't want to sit down in front of a tome. So this is just like a very quick book that she can get a lot out of. So that was everything I read during the month of November. If you want more in-depth reviews, I post in-depth reviews on my blog, which is linked in the description box. Follow me on Blue Sky too if you ever want to know any updates about what I'm currently reading. If you like this video, make sure and hit that like button. Thanks so much for watching. I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!